So how many of you have been tracking with us this summer in our 12 Powers series? We've been exploring what Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, identified as 12 powers, or 12 capabilities that we have as spiritual beings expressing ourselves as human beings. He studied many different various traditions, all spiritual religion, and when he looked at the life of Jesus, he saw that the 12 disciples, each characterized, sort of embodied a unique quality. And he identified the 12 disciples or apostles and those 12 qualities as what he called spiritual powers. And he truly believed that as we understand that we have these capabilities, that we can learn to work with them, and because it's not something we have to generate, we have these abilities, but we can surrender these to our higher self, and it becomes the path of enlightenment. It really opens us up to express the fullness of our spiritual potential. And so we started talking about faith and strength, and we've talked about 9 different things. They're all on video online if you'd like to see them. And today we reach the 10th one, and that is zeal. You don't hear the word zeal very much in our culture today. It's in the scripture, but the word probably most akin to that would be enthusiasm. There's a story of enthusiasm about a man who went to watch a movie. And as he sat in the theater, a woman sat down in front of him, and then a dog she brought in. The dog sat literally in the theater chair. And as the movie started, the dog's ears perked up, and the dog leaned in and was very attentive. And when the audience laughed, the dog almost seemed to chuckle. When the audience got kind of sad, the dog literally seemed to whimper and stayed totally engaged the whole time. And afterwards, the man followed the woman out and stopped her and said, "I have to ask you, I've never seen anything like this. I sat behind you. I watched your dog literally watch the movie, and he was so enthusiastic through the whole movie." And the woman said, "I know. I can't believe he was that enthusiastic either, because he hated the book." So for something that's impossible, the thing that I like about that is, if you ever look at Facebook, I get sent a lot of different stuff, and someone sent me this week a video, several videos of animals. One of them, it was a rabbit and a deer literally jumping and frolicking and playing together. And if you look at nature, I love that many of these things are coming to us because there is a joy, there is a playfulness and an exuberance and enthusiasm that expresses itself through nature. It's sort of like the rising tide, the saps that rise in the tree. There's something that pushes all of life forward. Well, we are connected to that same something, that zeal and enthusiasm are a part of our life. And so today we want to look at what is zeal? Why do we need it? How do we get it? And how do we keep it? When we think about zeal, I want to show you Charles Fillmore, the co-founder. He defined zeal is the affirmative impulse of existence. Its command is go forward. Zeal is the mighty force that incites all things to action, the eternal urge behind all things. The person without zeal is like an engine without steam or an electric motor without a current. To be without zeal is to be without zest of living. And so to have zeal is to really have purpose, to have oomph, gusto in your life. Zeal and enthusiasm are different than kind of being hyped up. Have you ever gone to a game or a concert and you're literally just buzzing with energy, or somebody talks to you about something and you get excited for a little while? I remember many years ago, I had a friend that came to me and they said, "Guess what? I've just found a new little job on the side. I now have my own independent business and I'm going to make lots of money. Would you like to learn more about it?" And I said, "Sure." The next thing I know, I found myself at an Amway meeting. And this room full of very enthusiastic people with products that I think were great. They demonstrated some stuff, and then they started drawing circles on the board, and these circles represented just, if I would just talk to my family and neighbors and friends and how much money I could make, and I got all excited. I could just see my future being rich very shortly, and I thought everybody in my family surely would like to sign up and get on board with this. And then I went home, went to sleep, and woke up the next morning, and it was all gone. It fizzled out. Can you relate? Have you ever done anything like that in your life? That's not zeal or true enthusiasm. That's getting hyped up or excited about something that doesn't authentically stem from within you. The word enthusiasm, in theos, means in God. It's because in God we live and move and have our being. And when we really know that, when our identity is a spiritual being expressing in human form, life takes on a completely different level of meaning and level of value. And so to be in God and to know that God is within us, that's authentic enthusiasm. That is zeal. The word zeal in Greek, the root comes from the root word zelos, Z-E-L-O-S. And so it means zeal, which is to be passionate and enthusiastic about some purpose, something that you believe in. Well, zealous is also the root of the word jealous. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Because why are you ever jealous? Well, it's because you're envious. You want something you feel like you don't have. You want to do something that you feel like you can't yet do. And so anytime we find ourselves feeling jealous or envious, it's because we feel like we're being held back, that we're not entitled or we're not experiencing what we want to have and be and do. Well, zealous and zeal is when we are full, wide open, not being in the way, but being the way, where life is flowing through us, where we're playing at 100%, we're giving it everything we've got, and we realize that our happiness and our joy is not dependent on external circumstances. Our happiness may rise and fall. We may get sad. That's a very normal and healthy part of life. We may get angry. That's a very normal and healthy part of life. But we don't get stuck there because we're so connected to a purpose that is so much bigger. And our life is not about saving it. Our life is about expressing it. And when we plug into that level of showing up in life, something authentic begins to flow through us. You recognize it in people, some of the characteristics, people who seem to have a lot of zeal and enthusiasm, when they walk into the room, they just radiate energy. You notice it. They seem curious and interested, have the ability to focus on the positive, now not ignoring the negative or the facts at hand, but able to deal with those in a positive mindset. Feel deeply and laugh often. They do something that they love, and they serve a purpose greater than themselves. So how would you rate yourself on those things? Because however we feel in that area, it will give us a gauge to what is our level of enthusiasm and zeal. I think our world, somebody told me at the first service, they said, well, this is perfect timing because I'm getting the doldrums of summer. And we know that sometimes life feels a little routine. And your life will be a rerun if you don't have zeal and enthusiasm. Have you been stuck in a rerun life before? We know what that feels like, and it's not a happy place to be. So if there's something urging and driving all of life forward, so it is with us. And to be connected with that flow is what opens us up to be connected with this vibrant, passionate zeal and enthusiasm. It's not artificially manufactured. It doesn't look like the lightest, brightest, loudest person in the room. Sometimes it's that person that's just the steady one, that has the something in them, even facing a surgery, that can still get up and sing, that can still get up and smile, that can still give to other people, because you're serving a purpose that's far greater than just your individual self. I think our world right now, if you turn on the television, it's easy to get inundated with negative and fear and all of these things. And so we need enthusiasm, because fear is contagious, but so is enthusiasm. Being able to, and enthusiasm and zeal is about recognizing that you are here for a higher purpose, being on purpose and giving from that purpose. So as we really look at what it is, why we need it, how we get it, and how we use it today. The second quote I want to share you is Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, wrote this when he was 94 years old. He sat down and wrote, "I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me." Can you imagine that affirmation at 94 years old? I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm and spring forth with a mighty faith to do the things that ought to be done by me. That's the affirmation of zeal. Zeal knows that it gives you life every day. And I want to be real clear. I'm not saying that if you wake up and you have low energy that you've lost your zeal. It doesn't mean that. It means that you have the ability to be connected to your passion. It has your ability to be connected to purpose, and it's your ability to always stay connected to the truth that you have something to give, always. It may be a handshake, it may be a smile, it may be holding a thought of a higher reality that no one else in the room can hold. You and you alone will know what it is for you to give, but when you realize that you carry a truth inside of you, and you're here to express the light, to be the light of the world, when you're on purpose in that way, something shifts, and you begin to be charged from the inside out. That's what zeal and enthusiasm is all about. So how do we get zeal? Well, zeal is, as I said, sort of having this expanded sense of purpose. There's a story about two farmers that had a lake between the farm. And a year came where there was almost no rain. The farms were both struggling, lack of rain, and the farmers came together and had a prayer. They said, we need help. So they got down and they really prayed, God, give us rain, guide us in what we're supposed to do. The one farmer went back and he said he had faith and he kept praying every day for rain. God, give us rain, guide us in what we need to do. The other farmer went back and he prayed and then he listened. Give us rain and guide us in what is ours to do. And he caught a vision. He saw himself digging a hole from that lake and creating a trench so that the water would flow. And so he did that. What he did is he opened up a channel and the water began to flow into his crops and his area began to flourish. Some while later, the other farmer came over and said, what are you doing? I'm still praying and having faith, but nothing has happened. And the other man said, yes, you are still praying, but I became a channel. I created a channel. And so when we think about zeal and enthusiasm and why we need it so that we can constantly be that channel, that we can always express what is ours to express no matter where we are. In the scripture, the Bible the disciple that represents zeal is Simon. He's called Simon the Canaanite or Simon the Zealot. In the Jewish faith, there was a particular group or a sect of Jews that were known as the Zealots. And they were classified as zealots because they were respected for their passion and commitment to their faith. They upheld the Jewish tradition in purity and sustained a type of excitement and commitment that most people couldn't. And so when Jesus called him to be a disciple, he was able to maintain that level of zeal and enthusiasm. So he represents that for all of us, that we all have the capacity to stay connected to zeal and enthusiasm as it flows through us. And that's the key, that it must flow through us, that we become an inlet and an outlet. There's a story about Harry Emerson Fosdick, who was a minister. He was a pretty radical minister years ago. He spoke up for things like racial equality and all people being the likeness of image of God at a time when it really wasn't popular. He was really, he caught a lot of flack for that. But he said it came out of when he was a young boy. He lived in upstate New York, and one day his mother gave him a little quart bucket and said, go pick a quart of raspberries. This little boy did not like picking raspberries, so he moped all the way over to the raspberry bushes and he began to slowly pick them. And he said his bucket was just never filling up. And then he said, a thought occurred to me. What if I brought my mother 2 quarts of raspberries? And he began to get excited inside because he thought, I can imagine how surprised she'll be. It's going to make her happy. Everybody's going to be surprised. He said all of a sudden, before he knew it, he had 2 quarts of raspberries picked. And as he wrote later in life, he said, my family never forgot, and I never forgot the joy from my mother's face when I gave her 2 quarts of raspberries instead of 1. Well, all of us can make that shift from have to I have the opportunity to. What he was able to do was to expand his sense of purpose. Rather than going to just pick raspberries, he was doing something that would bring his mother joy. When he connected to joy, when he connected to a higher purpose, it made it easier. I was thinking about this in my own life, and could I recall a time I did this, and a memory came to me. When I met Tia in Seattle, her family were some of the first people when the Seattle Sounders, a soccer team, came to Seattle. They were the initial season ticket holders. Their family all played soccer. She coached soccer, loved soccer. So one of the first things she invited me to do was to go to a soccer game. Well, it's the stadium in Seattle where the Seahawks play. It's a big stadium. I thought, this is going to be fun. Until she said, well, we go tomorrow night. And I thought, tomorrow night it's supposed to be like 30 degrees. Is this an outside place? Yeah. And isn't it supposed to rain tomorrow night? Oh, yeah, that's no problem. When I moved to Seattle, they said there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing or bad gear, that you just learn how to dress and deal with it. So they buy these little things called hand warmers that you put in your pocket. I figure if you need those, you just need to stay home. But we wrapped up and put on stuff because it was literally pouring down rain. And so we get there and get our seats, and all the players come out, so everybody stands up. And I start to sit down, and I realize they never sat down. The people stood up for the whole game. So it's pouring down rain, it's freezing cold, and it's standing up, and I have no clue what this game of soccer is about. So you can imagine about how happy I was. I felt like the little boy going to pick raspberries. I was not having a good time. And you know, there's that moment where you can either make everybody around you miserable, or you're going to have to shift something. And I had enough awareness that as I was getting really cold and miserable and irritable, and I had all my reasons why this was the dumbest thing in the world to stand out in the rain and watch these people kick a ball back and forth. And as I'm standing here, I then turned and I looked, and her face was just lit up. It was just like, isn't this wonderful? I still couldn't quite comprehend how one person could be in that reality, but like... But like Fosdick, what happened to me is my purpose expanded. It was no longer about standing in the cold and in the rain. It was really no longer about being there. It was about being together. It was about sharing something that somebody else is a part of their history, a part of their life. It's about seeing something through someone else's eyes. As I made that shift, and as they went around with the caramel popcorn, everything just got better and sweeter. That it's a matter of shifting, and that's what enthusiasm, it calls you to always stop and notice, okay, I'm kind of getting irritable. It's like jealous or zealous, irritable or zealous. What's going on inside of me, and what do I need to adjust? It's an inside job. And if we can't find a way to expand our perspective so that love comes in, we probably need to step back and say, why am I doing this, and is it mine to do? So the goal is, you know, how do we have zeal? It's to keep yourself connected to a bigger purpose, to always have love as a part of that purpose, and to be an outlet. When I was, a few weekends ago, we went out to Biltmore. I love to go to Biltmore and walk around. It's such a beautiful thing that we have right here. And one of my favorite places is a little gift store where they have gardening stuff, and there's a little cafe up on top. So I was in this little garden store, and I struck up a conversation with a woman who worked there, and she asked me where I lived. I said, Mills River. She said, oh, I grew up in Mills River, spent many of my years there. And I said, do you still live there? She said, no, my husband and I had a small farm, and he died about a year ago, and I couldn't manage it, so I had to sell it, and now I moved. And she talked a little bit about that. And I could see that the sadness, and I was present to her, and I said, gosh, I can only imagine being married to someone almost 60 years and having to make that kind of life change. And she said, yes. She said, I reached a point I knew I had to find an outlet for myself. Have you ever said that or heard somebody say that? I have to find an outlet for myself. But then this is what she said. She said, I knew I had to find an outlet for myself so life could flow back into me. And that really struck me as profound and so true. When we think of an outlet, we think of it flowing out. But you know, an outlet must also be an inlet. And that she really got that I had to find an outlet in order for life to flow back into me. And she said, and it's getting easier and easier. She said, I love plants and I love people, and I was so blessed to find this job. And I just walked away really touched by this person. She touched me that day. She ministered to me because of her, a person in the midst of, she had to have been in her probably the late 70s, maybe even early 80s, and she was vibrant and alive, and yet I could see the years that had taken place in her life and the loss and the pain. But I had to have an outlet in order for life to flow back into me again. That's understanding zeal and enthusiasm. It's about recognizing yourself as an inlet and an outlet, and remembering that we have to be on purpose. There's a great quote that says, years may wrinkle the skin, but absence of enthusiasm will wrinkle the soul. I love that because enthusiasm, I believe, makes the soul hardy. Lack of enthusiasm wrinkles the soul. And so this week for us to ask ourselves, where are there places in our life that we feel stuck or stifled? Or maybe one time you had dreams or a passion that's now been relegated to the basement or somewhere else. You don't engage in that anymore. But how are you being called to rekindle that and to discover that you have gifts to give? Richard, would you give me that song? The last story I want to share with you about, we talk about what is zeal and enthusiasm, why do we need it, how do we get it, but then how do we keep it? This is a beautiful story that comes from the Hindu tradition. In the Hindu tradition, there is a character called Lord Rama. If you read who is Lord Rama is the most perfect avatar of God, the ideal Son of God. Does that sound like anyone else? Jesus. So Lord Rama in Hinduism, we can say, is somewhat similar to Jesus in Christianity. The story goes, Lord Rama was building a bridge. The workers were amassing a huge pile of sand to begin. One squirrel would roll on and off the banks and bring sand on its little body. It would dump the sand clinging on its body, shake it onto the heap already there. The monkeys, which were Lord Rama's sentinels, and the soldiers described the incident to him. Lord Rama went to the squirrel and asked her why she was doing that. The squirrel replied, to help our Lord build a bridge. The Lord said, what will these minuscule grains of sand do by way of helping? The squirrel replied, I beg your forgiveness, Lord, but I do not understand. The grains of sand, are they enough or are they less? I cannot fathom that. All I know is that I am here to do my part. I am here to do what I can contribute to building this great bridge. This overwhelmed Rama, he lovingly patting her on the back. It is said that the stripes on a squirrel's body are the fingerprints of Lord Rama. You see, zeal and enthusiasm knows it's not about how great or how small. There's a story in the Christian scriptures about the woman. It's called the widow's mite. The woman who gave her mite, let's just say a person who puts a penny in the offering. And those around said, what value is that? But Jesus said, it's the greatest gift that has been given in all of this room. Why? Because she recognized it as the gift that she had to give. You see, zeal and enthusiasm will flow naturally, unimpeded. It's a part of our nature when we realize that we have gifts to give. And that when we make our day and our interactions be about giving that gift. And you may feel like, well, I don't have a gift to give. Oh, but you do. Right now, anytime you stop and you interact with a person in a restaurant or at a checkout line, do you actually look them in the eyes and say, how is your day going? When you hear conversations, do you withhold the criticism and the negativity? Because you see, zeal and enthusiasm are contagious, but also is whining and complaining and fear. And so when we hear those conversations, do we share something that is sharing our light, that is calling the light forth, that is allowing us to be a channel. In our own relationships, in all of these things, there's so many ways that we have, just like the little squirrel, it may feel like a few little grains of sand, but if you're doing what you can do in that given situation, in that given moment, you are opening up. You see, that's the key of the widow's mite, or of the squirrel. When you give from that place of awareness, you have opened yourself up as a channel to be the way. And what flows through you is far greater than what you have just given in the physical form. And hear this, as it flows through you, you get to experience it flowing through you. So how do you feel when you think of yourself as being a channel? Of being able to always connect to a higher purpose where you connect to love in whatever you're doing. This week I invite us all to take time to see and to be on purpose, to be that presence, so that this power of enthusiasm, this God within us, can truly flow through us. The song that we have selected is by Daniel Nahmod. I think some of you will know this. But I want to share with you in closing a quote that I think summarizes this beautifully by Howard Thurman. He says, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what brings you to life. Because what the world needs is people who have come to life. We need people who have come to life as the light of God. Join me in this song by Daniel Nahmod that says, get ready, my soul, I'm diving in. Get ready, my soul. I'm dying.